Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlan, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is home ownership consultant Ross Kay from the wealthyhomeowner.ca. Welcome back to the show, Ross.
Thanks for having me back on, Jim.
Ross, can a person flip burgers and still afford to buy a home in Canada?
Can a person flip burgers and still afford to buy a home in Canada? So, let me give you this little story, Jim. Earlier this year, we were introduced to a couple. The husband was what's called a burgerista. This is what Harvey's calls their burger flippers, burgeristas. The husband worked as a burger flipper at Harvey's. At a Harvey's, he had been there for, I think it was six or 7 years, something like that. And she was a waitress at a Swiss Chalet. Now, I don't know about out in BC, but in Ontario, Swiss Chalet and Harvey's often are the same in the same building. So it's these folks, that's where they met. That's where they had been employed. Anyways, they reached out earlier this year, and they joined one of the programs. But that's beside the point. They wondered about how we talked about on this show. So they were clearly listeners to the show, and they had asked us, how is this true? How can people? You talk about this dual income millionaire program. How can we do it? Well, in this case, it was really, really simple, because you see, these people when they first got together, they had bought a condo in Toronto, and they had paid $360,000 for that condo. Now, you got to remember, folks, this was only 2015, so it was a short period of time ago. So they got in just as house price illusion was going to reach its maximum, because the federal government had made changes to the home trading infrastructure, which caused house price illusion to accelerate. So these people were lucky that they got in when they did. I think they were making somewheres around $53,000 a year back there, Jim. They got the down payment was given to them from their parents. So when they reached out earlier this year, we set up a plan for them, a program, and they acted upon it. So as it turned out, what these folks did is they sold their condo, and they had cleared. Okay, the property had gone up in value by $320,000. Okay, so I think they sold somewhere around $680. I think they bought somewhere around $360, something like that. So they were able to pay back their parents the down payment, and they were sitting there with about $300,000 of equity after their expenses were all covered. You gotta remember, they paid out the mortgage for the 4 or 5 years that they lived there. So here they were sitting there, and they were looking, wanting to do the dual minimum wage millionaires. So we said, what are you talking about? You folks can move to another community where there's a Harvey's and Swiss Chalet, and you can do your exact same jobs that you're doing right now. Because you got to remember, they had received moved up. He had moved up through Harvey's. She was still waitressing, but their wage had gone up about $18,000 over those 5 years. So they were now around $74,000 a year, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm not going to tell you what community they moved to here in Ontario, but I'll just tell you it was down around the London area. So they lived in Toronto in a teeny tiny condo, and they moved down to the London area. They made arrangements that they got employment at the exact same company that they were restaurants that they were working at, Harvey's and Swiss Chalet. They got the same jobs and the same pay. So I think what it ended up, he ended up having to take about $2,000 a year less, is what he said it was going to be. Now they had a child, and she was pregnant with the second one. So the reason that they really wanted to move, Jim, was so that she had decided that she was going to stay home. So they were going to lose her income. So they were in this panic that they weren't going to be able to afford it. And I saw this commentary come across, and I'm looking through it, and I'm looking how the advisor's responding to her. And it's clear that people really don't understand. Like, you live in a goldfish bowl yourself, and you don't look outside of the goldfish bowl because you're too worried about, how you're living. These people just clearly weren't looking at the bigger picture. Because what these people were able to do, Jim, they moved down towards London. They bought a brand new 1,500 square foot, 2-story home. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful home. In a great neighborhood, access to great schools, located, I think it was about 15 minutes away from some of the best hospitals in the province of Ontario. He was going to have to commute, if I'm not mistaken, a little bit further because they didn't need a car where they lived in Toronto. They could walk to the job. So now they were going to have to get a car. Okay? But understand this, folks. They only have today, after they purchased a brand new car, paid all their moving expenses, land transfer tax, commission fees, everything covered in the whole transaction, they have a mortgage that is only $92,000. They are not even paying $500 a month on in mortgage payments. I think it's around. I don't even know if it's. I think it's around $400 or something. I'd have to check it out. I mean, you got to remember interest rates now that they're down around 1.99% for 5 years. These folks moved, and they now own a fully detached single-family home in Toronto. And now it's not even two of them working; it's one of them working. Now, the flip side of all this, Jim, is that the transfer payments that they're going to receive from when they have the new child, because now they're going to have 2 kids, the Child Canada tax benefit is basically going to cover that entire mortgage. So he has his full income now. So for the sake of the argument, I don't know what it is, so don't take me for exact here. But let's say that the fella, because I do know he was making good money. I think he was let's say that he's bringing around $40,000 to $42,000 a year. That's their whole life. They get to spend that money in their whole life. The house is already taken care of. They don't have to worry about it. That mortgage is going to be paid off the way that they've structured it in 7 years. So what I'm saying is, even though the payments were around $400, the way that they've structured it, it's going to be a little bit more. But that was their choice. They decided to have the mortgage not have a car payment. They have a brand new car. So basically, this car should last them till their house is paid off. Then when the house is paid off, they can still have only a 7-year-old car that they can go buy another one if they want. So this is the absurdity that we see when we hear about housing prices and life choices. There are so few people, Jim. There are so few people who can actually afford to live a wealthy life in the city of Toronto. It's incomprehensible. I mean, even people, Jim, who are sitting in a house where they made $800,000, $900,000 on equity lift over the last 6 years, those people, it really makes no sense for them even to live there. because the amount of money, the income that they're earning, when then you look about the income tax that is taken up because they're in a higher tax bracket, the transfers that they lose advantage of, the property taxes that they're paying on this more expensive home. Even if they move to a community where the property taxes, the mill rate is higher, they're still further ahead. You know, out your way, Jim, Vancouver, this is exactly the same thing. And what it all comes down to is life choices and looking at the data and the numbers and making a rational choice. You can choose to stay and live a constrained life in these cities if you so desire. That is your choice. But as this couple, they could have made this move. And if she had stayed employed, they could have ended up owning a single detached home even if they had no money down when they moved there. They could have moved down there, and if the parents had still given them the small down payment that they needed, given them, that means you're not legally violating mortgage default insurance guidelines. They could have set up their life in the exact same way. These people have chosen that they're going to avoid daycare costs, because that's another cost that no one discusses. Daycare costs. The amount of daycare fees that they would have had to have paid in Toronto for their 2 kids would have eaten up her entire income almost. It just didn't make sense. They could have continued to live where they were and scrape out a life. They could have still been well off when they retired, 30, 40 years from now. They still could have been well off, but they wouldn't have lived the next 30 years the way that they are going to be able to live the next 30 years with where they live now. It's really what this lockdown, I hope, is showing for everyone, because you've been locked in your house, haven't been able to go out and spend money doing the things that you want to do in these major urban cities. You get an opportunity to look at where you're going. Yes, a burger flipper in the province of Ontario and her spouse, who's a waiter, can live an awesome life in Ontario as homeowners, as long as you don't want to live in Toronto, as long as you don't want to live within about 50 kilometers of Toronto. You start to get outside of that, and things start to get affordable. Opportunities come available to you. You can work the property ladder. If you want to move, say, Waterloo, Kitchener, then you got to work the property ladder. You can't just jump into that single detached home. No problems. Out your way, Jim. People have to start out. Maybe you got to get out into Abbotsford or Kamloops. I don't know what it is, if that's what your choice. Or maybe you need to move to Calgary, the cheapest place in Canada to live. I mean, we hear all these negative things about the economy. Everybody's complaining about Calgary, and we say, what are you talking about? You can set up the best life in Canada, in Alberta, and in Calgary. I understand it's going to be a little bit colder than it is in southern Ontario. But you can set up that life working at Harvey's and Swiss Chalet, as this couple did. There are many ways to look at life, and this burger flipping family, well, I guess a rotisserie family, because she was working at Swiss Chalet, had made that decision. So yeah, Jim, you can flip burgers, own a single detached home, and retire a millionaire.
We'll have more with Ross Kay right after this.
Value from success, growth, and discovery. Golden Arrow Resources is a well-funded gold-copper exploration company with proven management and prospective properties in Chile, Argentina, and Paraguay. Golden Arrow trades on the Toronto Venture Exchange, symbol GRG, on Frankfurt, symbol G6A, and the OTCQB, symbol GARWF. For more information, visit us at goldenarrowresources.com or call Sean at 778-686-0135.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ross Kay. Ross, we're awaiting August housing stats to be released this week across the nation. What do you expect to hear, and how true will it be?
Okay, so what do I expect to hear? So let me put this in context, Jim, because we really haven't talked about this in the show in the couple of years you've had me on. Right now, this week, we have finished up June's housing market intelligence. Okay? So what I'm saying is this. We have only finished analyzing all of the data required to measure the housing market in June in the 1st of September. Yet this week, you're going to hear real estate boards across this country telling you what the housing market was like in August, 2 months later. And we're telling you we only finished the analysis, full analysis, of June today. It's only over now. That's actually over yesterday. There are data points that you need to collect and use simply to be sure what you're saying in June was right. We had to collect data points in August simply to be sure that our June analysis was correct. But the beautiful thing about housing markets is when we report June's data as of September the 2nd this year, we are still so far ahead of the market, it's ridiculous. And this is why. People believe, CMHC believes, economists believe, you can reach over and turn off the tap of the housing market instantaneously. They believe that a housing market changes within a month. They believe that someone can turn off the tap and turn off the tap of home buyers in this country. And we tell you that's impossible. It doesn't work that way. So this is how we see it. If you think about your tap, okay, let's say that you turn your tap off in June. So you want to measure the housing market in June. Well, you've got to wait for all of that water that you've let come out of the tap that's now sitting in the sink, run through the drain. You've got to wait till it goes all the way down your pipes. You got to wait till it gets out of your basement or out of your condo into the sewer system. After it gets into the sewer system, you got to wait till it goes into the waste filtration system. And when it comes out of the waste filtration system in June, when it comes out of the waste filtration system, then you can measure what it was like when you turned the tap off. Because you have no idea how long it takes for all of the activity that was going into June to get there. There was activity in November, December, January, and February, which was already coming into the faucet. So we look at it this way. You go way back to when the water first came into the municipal collection services. Then they had to have the chlorine and everything else into it to clean it up. Then they had to fire it through the municipal pipes to your house. And then you turn the tap and the water came in. We're measuring the housing market, Jim, way back before the municipality got a chance to get a hold of it, and way back when the water was still in the ground before it came in to be chlorinated. That's what we're measuring way, way back. And when we report on a June, we need to know where that water was coming from when it came into the city's municipal water system to be treated so it was potable or drinkable. We had to know what the rain was like right then, because how much and what season it was, because we need to know if there was runoff from the farms through the fertilizer into the water system, which again had to be removed before the city could chlorinate. If we didn't know all those things, when the water finally is dumped back into the lake after it's been after the wastewater has been processed, we wouldn't be able to measure the water. You are going to hear stories this week that are going to rock your world. You're going to hear stories about some housing markets that have gone crazy. And what we'll tell your listeners is this. What you're actually recording is what we recorded in June. These real estate boards will be reporting numbers that were forecastable in June, because you can't turn the tap off. The water is already in the sink. You've got to wait for it to be processed. After it's processed, you need to go in and you need to analyze the water that's coming out so you can calculate what water originally came in. Examples in the housing industry. Let's say that a builder, you had 2 or 3 years ago, you had purchased a townhome from a builder that the builder had guaranteed he was going or she was going to close for you in June of 2020. Okay, well, 3 years ago, when you entered that purchase agreement, you entered an agreement to buy that townhouse for a certain price. That price was locked in years ago. Now, normally, what we normally have to worry about, Jim, is interest rates. Because if interest rates were to have risen during those 2 years, and the net effect of those rising interest rates was that you needed more income to qualify for that mortgage, and wage gains had not met that increase in wage requirement, we would know that there were a few houses that were bought, townhouses that were bought years ago, that simply couldn't close. So we would have expected those units to come into the resale housing market and to be marketed by realtors as assignments. These are all the things you have to take into consideration when you're looking at June. And what's beautiful about this particular year is, because it has never, ever happened in history, is all of this gets vetted as true or false. What I'm saying, it's all vetted. Because the housing market closed down in March. It was locked down. Meaning, not only was the tap turned off, but your sink was clogged, the waste treatment plant was broken, and there was no water exiting for you to measure. You are now getting the aggregate of all of that happening at once. So, if you aren't adjusting what you're releasing to the public, you're simply just measuring the tap. And the tap is useless, because someone can reach the tap, slow it down, speed it up. There are market variables that actually do that, and they're cyclical. You have to understand how that works. So what you're going to hear this week is someone's going to take a cup and put it under the tap at the end of the month, and then they're going to look at it, and they're going to tell you what happened in the month of August about the housing market. And we'll tell you sometime at the end of October, 1st of November, my firm, will be able to look at that water and have analyzed it. We would be able to cross-check everything that is going on. And because that water that came out in August is going to exit the wastewater plant in October, November, and December, we are already reporting that live in real time when we release those numbers in October, November, and December, even though our reading was happening in August. Except we're not measuring at the tap. We're measuring at the end of the waste treatment as the water goes back into the water supply. We know how many townhomes weren't closed on, or how many builders delayed closings because they couldn't complete them. We know that starts were accelerated pre-lockdown, and they subsequently accelerated once again once the lockdown was open. They weren't accelerated because more homes were sold. Those houses had already sold. They simply accelerated because the builders wanted to get their financing out. If you're not adjusting for that in June, you're simply telling a story that's untrue. This is what's going to be released this week. You are going to hear stories coast to coast about the August housing market. And what we'll tell you is this. What you're actually hearing was how the housing market was working in June, not August. It's just that they measure the water as it's coming out of the tap. This is why they believe, the university has believed, you can't time a housing market. Well, obviously, if you're getting the water that's coming out of the tap, and you have no reference of what was going into it, you have no idea what the components of that water really are, even though you think you do. You need to measure that water as it's coming out the end of the entire cycle. Because only then do you know what's going to happen tomorrow, the next day, a month, 4 months, 8 months from now. The reason why we don't have to worry about our 4 and 8 month calculation is because we're already measuring the market that far in advance. When they release stats this week, they are going to be releasing the state of the market as of June. It'll have nothing to do with August because it is impossible. It is impossible to collect all of the data that is required to analyze the housing market in August this week. It is impossible. It's impossible on the 15th or the 16th or the 17th when the Canadian Real Estate Association claims they did so for the country after just simply regurgitating what your local real estate boards are releasing this week. Housing markets, as we've said in the show before, move months and months and months before any economist, any housing analyst in the country knows about it. I hope the way that I've explained it today about how the water flows through the system and how measuring at a tap is a simply useless measure that only serves to confuse the public and leads to bad advice.
We'll have more with Ross Kay right after this.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ross Kay. Ross, Karen in Kamloops asks, as new immigrants to Canada, we're wondering how to select a real estate agent and what concerns should we be focused on?
What concerns you? Well, the very first concern that you need to be focused on is that you're not going to get the full story from the real estate agent. So that's the very first thing you should be focused on. You've come to Canada, and you're going to be inundated with marketing materials from local real estate agents. These marketing materials are going to skirt the rules and regulations that those real estate agents are required to follow. They're going to strategically skirt those rules and regulations to prevent from being charged and allow them to earn commissions. As new immigrants to Canada, you're not going to see this is going on. This is going on coast to coast. It is happening in every city. There's not a real estate agent in Canada today who operates outside of the construct that would allow them to serve you properly. So you just have to accept that. Now, you may very well still choose to deal with a real estate agent, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you need to put procedures in place so that you can hold that real estate agent accountable. Because this is the fear. This is what everyone needs to understand. The greatest fear of real estate agents is accountability. It is the greatest fear. It is such a great fear that accountability has basically been legislated out of organized real estate today. Your provincial trading legislation, your MLS rules and regulations, they all have simply made sure that accountability does not take place. By focusing on sellers instead of buyers, it's easily to have done this in the past. And as new immigrants, this is what you should be asking. You need a set of questions to put before your real estate agent, and you need to have your real estate agent, or the ones that you're interviewing, sign a piece of paper that says this is what our responses are. In other words, how many years have you been in a licensed real estate agent in the province that I'm looking to buy a home in? They need to write down the number. If it's 2 years, they write 2. If it's 10 years, they write 10. You need to ask them, how many homes have they sold representing sellers in their entire career? Don't let them just, hey, I've sold a lot of houses. Oh, I sold 10 houses last year. No. You want to know their career numbers. Anyone who has sold any number of homes knows the exact number of homes that they sold. If it was 2, they'll know it's 2. If it's 22, 222, 2,000, 222, 5,222. They are going to know that exact number. You need to ask how many sellers they have represented with a listing contract that has subsequently resulted in a sold home. You need to have that number written down on a piece of paper. And you need to flip it around. You need to ask them how many buyers they have worked with in their career as a buyer representative where the buyer has successfully purchased a home. Get the number. You want the exact number. You can put in there plus or minus 5 in case they're out by 1 or 2. I mean, that's no problem, but they'll know that exact number. This is not complicated. The average real estate agent in Canada doesn't even sell one house. So don't worry about it. If they sold 10, they'll be happy that they know exactly that they sold 10. Then you also want to ask them, how many homes in the price range that I'm looking to buy, in the city that I'm looking to buy, have you sold in the last year? Odds are it's going to be 0. Okay? But you want to know that. You want them to write down a 0 if it's 0. If it's a 2, it's a 2. If you're working with a high-profile agent, you want to make sure that the wording you use is that real estate agent themselves, not their team, is who they're quoting. Because, again, this is a way that real estate agents or brokerages get around the rules. The rules are a little bit different in BC than they are in Alberta, or they are in Ontario, or they are in Quebec. So these are the questions that you have to ask. There's about another 6 or 7 questions that everybody should ask, and we are probably going to go ahead and just put that together and give that out. But we haven't made a firm decision on that, and it's not released. But if you simply ask those questions that I talked to you about up front, you're going to get some information. You also want to ask this: have you ever been charged with a criminal offense? You notice I didn't say convicted; I said charged. I say this because There are convicted criminals in this country working as real estate agents. And you certainly need to know. I know in Ontario, there's convicted sex offenders who are working as real estate agents. There are the news reports that verify this. Like, this is not even computed. There in Ontario, there was a long-term fight between the regulator and a real estate agent about reinstating their license after they've been convicted of sexual assault. And they admitted that they did. And it was a long, drawn-out process. But they're selling real estate today. You need to know that. If you don't ask these questions, then you're not going to have the information you need available in terms of choosing a real estate agent. Because no one is going to help you out on this. Your local real estate board is not going to help you. Your local newspapers are not going to help you. Your friends and neighbors are not going to help you. Your relatives are not going to help you. The provincial body is not going to help you. Korea is not going to help you. Nobody is going to help you. You are on your own. You have to accept that in Canada, you are on your own. And the only way to protect yourself is to ensure that you hold those you're dealing with accountable. Don't go by, you see some real estate agent on a whole bunch of bench signs saying that I'm number one in my marketplace, or they're on some advertising somewhere else, and you see their name all over the place. You need to know what level of experience you're dealing with, and you need to have them write it on a piece of paper and then sign on the bottom of the piece of paper that these answers are correct. I can tell you folks, I would have no problem ever signing off what I'm telling my clients what my experience was. I had no problem. You want to know how many houses I'd listed? I'd tell you. You want to know how many houses I'd sold? I'd tell you. You want to know how many buyers I worked with? I'd tell you. You want to know how many buyers in a price range in a municipality in a neighborhood that I want that I sold? I would tell you. None of these questions are complicated. It's the basic minimum that you should expect as a new immigrant to Canada, because you are going to be placing a tremendous amount of trust in your real estate agent. If they can't do the courtesy of writing down on a piece of paper, answering a few questions that you would have for them, in exchange for earning tens of thousands of dollars for a few days' work, they are not deserving of your business. So, drop me an email or at rosk.com. I think there's a contact list there, and we can provide you a copy, a list of the questions that you need to ask. I'll watch for the name Karen to be included in the email address. Thanks a lot.
Ross, thank you so much for the update.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Jim.
My guest has been Ross K. from wealthyhomeowner.ca. Again, his website, rossk.ca. If you have questions for Ross or the show, you can send them to info@housestreet.com. Find us on Twitter @HouseStreet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HouseStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HouseStreet.com radio is a production of House Street Media Incorporated.